Hi there, my name is Madison with Stanley and Associates, and I am super excited about today's video. On our last video, I sat down with my attorneys Dustin and Jacob to discuss the highly controversial McKamey Manor. We talked liability, legality, and I traumatized my attorneys by showing them some footage. If you haven't already, I highly suggest watching that video before you watch this one. But as for today's video, I had the opportunity to speak to two gentlemen who have up close and personal experience with McKamey Manor. You may recognize them from the Hulu documentary Monster Inside, America's Most Extreme Haunted House, Kris Smith and Brandon Vance. With their valuable insight and experience, my attorneys will be able to have a more informed discussion. And before we get started, I would like to stress that nothing you will hear in this video is or should be taken as legal advice, defamatory remarks, or accusations. These are purely opinions based on facts that have already been made public. Now let's get into it.
I was recently in The Monster Inside on Hulu right now. It's a documentary that is exposing Russ McKamey and McKamey Manor. How I got into it is, you would think like I stumbled upon it and was lucky, but after you start to learn Russ and you realize that his following isn't as big as he claims it is, it was actually pretty easy. So I was working on some graphic design, and I had this logo with a skull. It looked almost like a video effect logo. And I was watching Haunters Art of the Scare on Netflix, and that features Russ in it. And I was like, man, I would love to know how much of this story is real, because this is just too crazy to be real. And so I put the words McKamey Manor on the skull, and I sent it to him. I said, hey, this logo is free for you to use. I just want 20 minutes of your time to talk. And from there, he tried to get me to, it was like within 5 minutes of him responding to me after I sent it, saying, do you want to take a tour? There's supposed to be this 20,000 person waiting list. And within 5 minutes of me sending a picture, I'm getting offered to get bumped to the front of the line. I rejected a tour for a while. And then when I started seeing, okay, maybe the stuff that I saw on YouTube and all that, it isn't real. And I finally, after I think I was a mod at this point already for him, for his social media, I finally said, you know what, I'm going to do a tour. And I went there. We got through the contract signing. There was a whole ordeal with personal stuff going on with him. And halfway through, I was like, dude, I'm just kind of out of it. Like, I don't want to do this tour. And I left. Well, about a year goes by, and he's like, you got to come back for round two. You got to come back for round two. Now, at this point, I know the manor is completely fake. It's all his front yard and a few little things in his backyard, but there is no manor. There is no way of winning the $20,000. That's all fraud. And so I decide to go back, and we film some stage stuff at first. He has a thing called the Manor Horn, which he pretends is you're on top of a cliff and you got to dive off to a platform on the other side. It's actually like a tree fort with a zip line. Mm-hmm. And then, so we filmed that. We filmed this other thing that was supposed to lead to an underwater maze. We got that stuff. And then he talked me into getting into this trough, and he said that he wanted to do a thing called public transportation, where he was going to drag the trough behind the car, and he wanted to get some footage of it. When you're there, you got a blindfold on, you got a cage on your head. Under the helmet, you got headphones on, so you can't really hear stuff. It's like almost a medieval thing. It just fits on your shoulders and clamps around, and has a lock that holds it in place. And it's very heavy. It's uncomfortable. You can't really, there's not much wiggle room at all with it. He puts a tarp over it, and I could tell something was going on. I didn't know exactly what it was, but something was being put on the tarp. And that's when he pulled the tarp away and dirt fell on me. I did not want to be buried alive. I had told him before that wasn't something I wanted to do. And he continuously is throwing the dirt on me. And if you've seen the Hulu doc, you see I quit like 20 some times, and he just keeps adding more mud. It got to the point how I was positioned, I really couldn't get out of it. I had a little bit of free movement with this hand, and I kept trying to knock the dirt out of my mouth. But when I would do that, mud would start pouring in. So I'm choking on this, asking him for him to stop, and it just kept going. And what the Hulu doc doesn't show was the only way I got him to stop was I promised I would come back the next day for round 2.
I quit round 1. I'll be back tomorrow. I quit tonight. I can't do it. I'm so freaking out right now. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Russ is really doing this for himself. I mean, he's talking this guy into coming and doing it. I feel like he's getting a little bit of something from this by getting this guy to do it who didn't necessarily want to do it. With a 20,000 person wait list, there shouldn't be any shortage of people who want to go do it. But this guy didn't necessarily want to do it. And then he's quitting. So I feel like he's gets some enjoyment out of people who want to quit and not letting them.
Seems like Chris, did he say he was in the space a little bit of social media and stuff like that? Is that why he got bumped to the top? Maybe Russ was looking at him as somebody who was going to post about this or going to talk about this.
He sent that logo.
Yeah.
So he reached out to him. But,
right. And there's no big waiting list. You know, that's a part of marketing and stuff.
I think that's what he's saying. This is all a fraud. But even a year later, he knew that this was very fraud-based. Kind of a big fake thing, essentially. It's like, there's no manor, there's no this, there's no that. So if there's no manor, and basically this guy's just putting him, on a table?
In a trough.
Or in something that's just like, could be in this room right here. And then let me pour a bunch of wet mud. It's not even dirt. It's wet mud, which you can't even breathe. I mean, you couldn't, if that was covering your whole face, it would coat your nose and mouth.
And also the fact that he said that he had to agree to go the next day just to get out of being, strangled. What is that called? What is that word when you
won't let someone leave?
Well, yeah,
false imprisonment?
Yeah.
Kidnapping, maybe? That. I mean, the way these laws are written are crazy, but they're not crazy, but are broad in a sense. And you have them in a medieval torture device where they cannot move. I don't know. It's just so crazy.
Let me tell you, that whole documentary made me feel uneasy, but when I saw you getting mud poured on you, I physically recoiled on the couch because it just seemed so suffocating and so terrifying. But so you hadn't actually signed a waiver to go through with that. It was under false pretenses, would you say?
Yes. So the first time I went, I started to sign the waiver, never finished it. Second time I went, because we were just filming stage stuff, I never signed a waiver. And
just to clarify, you weren't, kind of like how Gabby said in the Hulu doc, she was kind of running the social media pages as a friend, as a friendly, thing. Okay. So you weren't buddies with Russ McKamey outside of that?
No, me and Russ were friends.
Oh, okay.
So Gabby, she did the she did the San Diego social media stuff. By the time I came into the picture, she was long gone. So we never even crossed paths. I started doing the graphic work for him, and then he would start sending me videos to edit, and I would do that stuff for him too. But we started to get to the point where we would hang out. We would go to conventions together. He came up, I live in Michigan. He came up to Michigan to go to different haunts with me. I would drive down there. I got one of his dogs.
Oh, wow. Okay. So there is a real friendship there, or what?
Well, yeah. So I thought. I mean, he's a narcissist, and he makes you think that you're his only friend in that, when realistically, until he doesn't need you anymore.
My attorneys were actually wondering, if any of the aspects of McKamey Manor were fake. And you kind of answered that.
Yeah. So the majority of it has always been fake. So in San Diego, he claimed to have 2 warehouses that he would take you to. He just had a red van. And what would happen would be they would pick you up in the red van, put you in it, and there would be 5 to 7 other people, mostly guys, a couple girls. And it would just be like a gang style beatdown until they felt you couldn't take it anymore. And then they would pull over and push you out.
When I first heard about McKamey Manor, it was, while an intense haunted house, it was relatively mild from what it is, perceived as today.
Mm-hmm.
So you weren't there during that time.
No. So yeah, it started as just like a little cool home haunt, right? With all the kids going, the kids were working it in the neighborhood and all that. And then eventually he wanted to up it, get more scarier. And that's when he added the actors. Now the actors were only in San Diego. After he got moved out of San Diego to Tennessee, that's when I got involved. And it's just him and you that are going through it. Sometimes a camera guy is with him.
Was the trough situation where you saw it being taken too far, like that was the limit for you, or was there something before that?
For me, I knew everything was fake, right? So there may be some situations that he'll put into your head saying that you got to do something. I didn't see, like the limit didn't really get crossed on the other things for me. The trough, though, there was no control to it. Now, did I later find out about other things that he did? Yeah, like dragging people behind his car while they were tied to a chain.
My attorneys found online some stuff that was brought up by people who were speaking out that wasn't actually recorded. Would that be one of those things? Because that's kind of intense, and I haven't seen a video of that personally.
So there is, if you follow the Reckless Ben series, you may have heard about this hard drive, right?
Yeah.
There's this missing hard drive that we may have gotten a hold of that does show somebody being dragged across gravel. You
mentioned in your comment under our YouTube video that you are filmed reading the waiver in its entirety, but you are most of the time under some form of duress. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So while you're doing the waiver, he's making you do physical activities, right? Sometimes it's wearing a metal can on your back as they put weight on it and make you crawl around and you have to stop and read the waiver for a little while. Sometimes it's doing jumping jacks. I've seen other parts where they're reading the waiver, you're getting slapped in the face, getting zapped with a dog collar. So there's never just sitting and reading. Something is happening to you all the time, which to me, when that stuff's going on, it's really hard to focus and make sense of what you're reading. On top of all the grammatical errors throughout that waiver, it's already confusing enough.
But there is like a news story of Brandon, and I assume he does this because the news was there, of Brandon signing the waiver and going through it, and Russ on the phone with the local authorities to let them know like everything's okay. This is in 2017, and I'm sure he, was saving face, but I have seen photos and videos of people it seems like they're already doing the tour before they're even signing the waiver, and so it seems like, how is that ethical?
And that's very common with him calling the cops, which is another scary thing, right? He calls the cops ahead of time and says, hey, no matter what you hear or anything, it's just me doing my haunt. Please don't come out here.
If I was a police officer, I think I'd look at that with some
right.
I ask some questions.
The interesting thing here is it's like hiding in plain sight. You're so over the top. You're going out into the open to make it not acceptable. It's like if you act so outlandish, but you act like it's fine, then it kind of, people, it's sort of a disconnect. It's not normal. Like, yes, normally the people that you think would do this would be doing it in their home to torture people. They don't want anybody to find out. But if you flip that on its head, and the calling the cops, I think is brilliant, because he's like, this is fine. I'm not even afraid to call the cops. I'm not even afraid to call the police. But what if, he said, why don't you come out here and see what's happening? I think it'd be different if the police called, well, go ahead and come out here and just supervise to make sure everything's on the up and up. I don't think that would have worked out very well. This duress thing with the waiver is so dumb. Yeah, I think.
Even if everything's fake, like if everything's fake, you still can't do. You still can't drag people behind your car with a chain.
That's ridiculous. And I think when we first heard about this, I think it was like our questions were like, how do people want to do this? And how is he making money? And can you sue them? I think it's been flipped a little bit around. It's like, how does this guy avoid jail time?
I know. I'm kind of wondering that, because I guess some of the comments were saying that he doesn't have a ton of money, which I don't think anybody would know unless they did have a lawsuit that looked over everything he's got. Some people are pretty brilliant at hiding stuff. But assume he doesn't. Then you'd be looking at possibly jail time and stuff like that. Unfortunately,
that's what I'm saying. Picture the police be like, okay, well, we'll just come out there and we'll just supervise. You've called us a bunch of times at this point.
Yeah.
Well, and you're certainly thinking that someone's going to call, so maybe we'll just come out there and see what's happening. And let's say that in your mind, you're picturing this police officer standing there. Well, this guy dumps mud on the face, right? Like, and does things the exact same way. There's no way that continues, I don't think. And the guy's screaming, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done, you know. I'm dying. It's probably what some of these people were saying.
This is a hypothetical question, but let's just say somebody's gotten seriously injured or potentially died out there. The cops knew this was going on, but like took his word for it. Are they now held in some way responsible for it?
I think you're going to have a case-by-case basis. It's also very difficult to sue the police, and that's a bit of a negligence aspect that each state has laws that kind of govern how and when. For instance, the Texas Tort Claims Act is basically a law that says the state has to waive immunity in these certain circumstances in order for them to be sued in the first place.
Good question, but there's a possibility. It just has a lot to do with the evidence that they had and what they got. And 90% of the time, you know, suing the police, like he said, they have immunities, and it's very hard to do that. But, you know, depending on the evidence, there have been cases like that we read about in law school.
Police brutality is one. I mean, they still get sued on that, but that's very technical. Yeah. You know, are you suing the police department for this or that? Are you suing the individual police officer? Things like that. But
suing for not responding to an emergency, there are cases like that as well. But it's just very, very hard.
In this case, he's almost, like I say, I'm going to put it out there. I'm so confident, or there's nothing wrong here.
Getting ahead of it.
Yeah. I think that's he's a smart guy. I always wonder, are these guys smart enough to orchestrate this, or is it sort of dumb luck that they
made it
make that they make all the right jumps in the video game to get this far, like just by chance. I don't know.
Yeah. It was by chance that I found, because I was trying to do research on Brandon, and I saw that he was on a news interview doing this, and I was like, he's on the phone with the police? Can you do that? I thought that was insane.
Do you think it's intentional? I'm sure it is. The putting you under duress aspect of it.
Very much so. I mean, one, he does it to show that he can get people to quit without even finishing the contract. So putting you under duress, reading that. Two, to trick you to get you to come in even further, to get you to just sign that away. And then you feel like you are stuck. Like, he waives in that waiver, there's a thing saying he can sue you for $50,000 if you speak out. So a lot of these victims from San Diego haven't talked for years because they've been worried that they would be sued for $50,000. And now they're seeing us with our big movement with Hulu and the McKamey Manor Exposed Facebook group, that everybody's now coming out of the woodwork and being like, this is my story. This is what happened.
Yeah. And from that, I wanted to ask you, did he ever seem at all fazed by a potential lawsuit or anything? Or did he think that people would just take that at face value?
I would say before the Hulu doc coming out, he was not fazed. He would say, no, they're not going to sue me. He would threaten, remember, if you talk, I'm going to sue you for $50,000. I heard him say that numerous times to people. So he was never worried about getting sued before that. But now I hear he's kind of shaking in his boots a little bit.
Why do you think he films?
I mean, I could go real dark with you on this. I honestly think it's his trophies. He has two of them. One, when you end, you got to give your onesie up. Like, he keeps it. And in his barn, they're all stapled to the walls. There's just hundreds of onesies. And he has them like spread out so they make like room dividers and that in it. It's terrifying. And then two, he keeps the videos and he just watches them. He doesn't make money on YouTube from these videos. He's not monetized.
Right. And that was I guess a theory that one of my attorneys had brought up. I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then when you said, he doesn't monetize from it, I was like, okay, that makes sense, because how could he? These are violent videos. Do you know if before any of this, Russ has been sued at all? And do you know what the outcome was?
From what I understand, he has never been sued. Nobody has ever tried to actually file a complaint on him.
Is there any other McKamey Manor locations?
No. So he had a friend that owned a haunt called BFE, and I believe that was near Nashville. He did one time where he took somebody onto that property, and it was just in the woods. So he does occasionally put you in a car, drive you around, and make you think you're going to another location. You're just somewhere on his block. He drove around for 20 minutes in a circle, and he has you get out because you're blindfolded. You don't know any better. Has you get out and walk through the woods and try to climb a tree or go through a ditch, things like that. And then he puts you back in and takes you back to his house.
There has been, from what I've seen online, a couple different reasons that Russ himself has said, you know, moving from California to Tennessee, one of which was like property taxes and then communal outrage. Do you know why? Is there any kind of speculation there?
It's mostly the property taxes. So what happened was he was in a relationship with a woman. They owned the house together. And they went to a convention, him and his new girlfriend. When he got back from that convention, the woman he had been with cleared him out. She owned all the props and all the animatronics. She took it all back. She moved out. The property had back taxes on it. So he packed up ship, found out he could get cheap property in Tennessee, and moved down there.
Because we did speculate maybe there was laxer laws that would allow him to do what he's doing. And in going into my next question, my attorney Dustin wanted to know, like, if we were to follow the money, what would we find? Because there's no participant payment. There's no monetization. Where is this money coming from? Obviously the 20K is not. Sure.
So he does get because he's a veteran. He's a retired veteran. He makes his money that way, and he works at Walmart.
You mentioned that there's also no medical staff. Has there been any times where medical intervention was needed?
Technically, in San Diego, several people went to the hospital immediately after because of head trauma. So there probably should have been medical checking them out.
Yeah, I know. I saw Lori and Laura, they looked severely beaten afterwards.
Yeah, unrecognizable almost. I mean, it's horrible what she went through.
Can you shed any light on where or why the 20 grand prize came to be? I assume it's marketing. What are your thoughts?
A little bit of marketing, but it's really hard to talk somebody into coming to your house so that you can get the crap beat out of you, right? So it targets people that are financially unstable, that are willing to do something horrible to be able to possibly have their life changed with that 20 grand. Money just drives people to want to do things. So he hangs that over your head. Now, a lot of times you'll see him say the money's off the table, right, publicly. But when you talk to him privately, he'll make a deal with you that money will be back on the table. And he also hits you up for a $60 donation as well.
I noticed a lot of things were very inconsistent with how he does business. For instance, it's a no tap out kind of experience, but he does let you tap out, when the 20 grand is involved, because he doesn't want you to make it through the whole thing. Would you say that's accurate?
No, because there's no way of making through it. It's physically impossible. And how I'll explain it is, so he has a thing. He says that you have to survive 8 hours from the time the clock starts. Clock doesn't start when you do the front yard activities. Clock doesn't start when you do some of the backyard activities. So, for example, he has a thing called rat race. That's probably the most known one, where we see people crawling on their back while he's standing with a hose spraying them in the face. Mm-hmm. He tells you got to get to the middle of it. And in the middle, there's going to be a plexiglass container with a key hanging off of it. When you grab that, it's going to drop a bunch of rats on you. That is when your clock starts. However, there is no plexiglass with a key anywhere there. It doesn't exist. So no matter how long you search and how long you try, you're going to quit. If you can get through enough of the waterboarding and keep going, you're eventually never going to find it, to the point where you just quit yourself. So there is never a chance of getting the $20,000. So he doesn't worry about pulling you out, because you can never get that clock started.
My attorneys have often said, and I'm paraphrasing, that laws are put into place because of lawsuits, making examples of bad practices or bad behaviors in general. And we haven't seen that with McKamey Manor. We haven't seen Russ McKamey held accountable. And so there's always the chance, of a copycat. What's stopping some college students from typing up a waiver and beating each other? Have you seen any people try to replicate this?
So there are other extreme haunts out there.
Mhm.
McKamey Manor, unfortunately, what it shows you is not what takes place in these extreme haunts. Now, extreme haunts are a very narrative, story-driven experience where you do come across forms of mock torture, but there's always that consent. There's always that trust. When you say you're done, you're done. They're very professional. They have medical teams on staff. They have insurance. They have a brick and mortar building, where McKamey Manor, is just in his backyard. So could I see somebody else making another McKamey Manor? 100%. But you got all these other places out there, which is where it gets scary with that law. And I hear what you're saying about if a law came into place, how does it affect these other businesses? Their actual businesses where people, that's their living.
Right. And I was going to ask you, like, places like Miasma,
Mm-hmm.
who are ethical and there's consent involved, there's talking and understanding, I bet, and I hate this, that it might leave a bad taste in people's mouth, or like create a narrative that, oh, these places are just out to beat you and get video content. And that's unfortunate, because I don't think Russ McKamey should be the end all be all to that.
Yeah, and that's what we were hoping to show in Monster Inside, was that contrast at the end where you just see how a professional one works compared to just living out some sicko's fantasies in his front yard. And the difference between the two is Russ wants to break you. His whole goal is to get you to quit and show his power over you. Where at these other haunts, they want you to make it. They want to give you a challenge so that it's difficult to do, but they are rooting for you and going to do what they can to get you to the end.
I'd say a guy without assets or anything is a lot scarier running one of these places.
True.
The difference between that guy and the other people is they are probably trying to make money.
And they have something to lose.
Yeah,
right?
in car accidents, you see people get hit by uninsured drivers, and for the most part, you can't even go and file a lawsuit and get a judgment on some 26-year-old with no assets, nothing to their name. So most attorneys won't file on the lawsuit, even though you see them with DWIs, you see them with gross negligence,
license.
just driving right in front of people, our clients. But a lot of times the insurance is the only thing there, because if you do put a judgment on them, you don't collect in many of the cases, and most likely the guy won't ever have anything to collect on. I'm sure that the other haunted house are actually there to make money, and you see that they will have consent. And like I said, there's always probably some type of physical stuff you can waive, but when it goes beyond the amount that you're allowed to waive, beyond the consent, then there's just no going back from that.
Well, it sounds like there are these. I've never even heard the term extreme haunts. And this is way outside of my my world.
Immersive haunt.
Yeah, he was scared of the video the
I
other day.
didn't even want to watch the thing, but I don't watch the trailer.
But I don't think that's a good example for what these people
Well, that's what I'm saying.
do.
What he's saying is very true. This is how you do it. If people are allowed to do this. We're not saying they're not. And then this is probably the example of why not to do this. Like, once somebody shows interest, he's like, oh, now I've got this guy. It's a good point that he makes, that like these other legitimate places, that gives you a bit of trust, which makes this one a little worse. Because like Jake, one of the worst things you can see on the road is like a 1994 beat up car that's driving crazy. Every time I see that, I'm always like, they got nothing to lose. They're not worried about banging up their car. They got no insurance. You ain't gonna sue them. Like, they're just gonna hit and run. Like, I hate to see that. But the interesting thing is, like, how many steps away is this guy from being a serial killer?
Well,
And
forget serial killer. How many steps away until someone dies doing this?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But think about it. He's
All the
pushing
signs.
this envelope. He's basically torturing people. And so, all I know is movies or TV shows. But those guys tend to push the limit, or at least what's portrayed in movies and TV is that they're pushing the limit to get that gratification. Well, at some point it's not enough. So that's why he brings up he's in the military. What did he do in the military?
I think he was in the Navy.
Well, I mean, but some of the
yeah.
guys have PTSD issues from that. A lot of guys who come back, they're not in that world anymore. I just was watching a video the other day where this guy basically went to Vietnam and he wound up killing hundreds and hundreds of men. I mean, like, some of them in hand-to-hand combat, and there is some torture involved in war. So, was that, is he still trying to exist, to get that type of satisfaction or whatever? adrenaline rush, essentially. Because he could just make this a legitimate place. It doesn't sound like it'd be that hard.
Yeah, he might have been trying to make it and just not being able to monetize it.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I feel like. He had to have been trying to do something, or we wouldn't be seeing it right now.
Yeah. Because I think it was like genuine when it first started. Like he was doing it for kids. And then, you know, how do you go from that to beating up a woman so severely she's unrecognizable? I don't understand that.
I think you make that gradual move because he's doing it to satisfy himself.
Yeah.
So that's you starting off here. Oh yeah. Oh, the little 8-year-old got scared. That was cool. Oh, now an 18-year-old got scared. That's cool. Oh, now oh, what if I do this? Like it seems like he's just progressing this, which I think like if you look at like Guantanamo Bay, where we have these terrorists, and I'm sure there's some questionable things going on from time to time. Like if some guy's doing that and he's not doing that anymore, then like this seems to be just fit right in.
Or he just doesn't know how to monetize it. He did everything because we're saying
well
some people just aren't good at the business part about
That's
it.
True.
Though I'm saying some people might, he might have had $5,000 for a van, and he did all this smart stuff, hiring an actor, doing all this stuff. Like, seems like he had a reason. He can't be monetized because they're violent videos, but that gets the marketing out. That gets the people to look. He might have had a plan to make money and just doesn't know how to turn it into something, which would be, like you said, like make it a legitimate business.
And if the word gets out, I think it, like on those other places, you look at this place, the McKamey Manor, if the word gets out that this is what he's doing, I don't think there's as many people wanting to do it. So let's say he monetizes, he charges people $50, $100, even $300, $500, because there's much fewer people who are willing to go this distance. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, I'm not paying for that,
How do you feel about the whole Silence of the Lamb lotion on the skin thing he's got with hanging up the onesies and...
if you ever watched what is that TV show, Criminal Minds or whatever, or like where they talk about the serial killers?
Literally
like,
any of them.
That's what I was thinking, like with the serial killer show, I think. I don't remember the name of it exactly, but it's like they keep those trophies to people. Like that's weird. It's a little...
It's going to be really hard for me to relate with, like, you know what I mean? Maybe he's doing it to scare people. I always think of it as that way. It's like, oh, he's doing this for an impression, but maybe he's just a weirdo. I don't know.
Like, you're trying to like, find a reason, right?
Yeah. Like, there's got to be, maybe everything is, I don't know. Maybe he's proud of it.
The legitimate ones. Are they keeping trophies? Probably not.
No, I don't think so.
And I think his trophies are a little more personal because he's like this guy. Developed a relationship with the guy. It was a year before he actually went through it. Mm-hmm. So, that's quite a long. That's why I was wondering, like, who are these people? And sometimes these narcissists, they have. I would start calling these people victims at this point. Like this guy reached out and he said 5 minutes. If you have a long wait list and people wanting to pay you money to do this, like this guy's not even worth your time probably. So then, but now you have what I would say you've zeroed in on someone. Like I don't even see any, like the lawsuit of this is get a judgment against the guy. What is it going to do really? Mm. I think that the way to stop him is, first of all, he has a contest, I believe, for this $20,000, and there's going to be contest rules. It has to be winnable. I feel like is going to be the first rule of your contest. Mm-hmm. There could easily be laws set up to do that. At that point, you've induced someone into going through this when you knew there was no chance of a payout at the end. Mm-hmm. So that criminal side plus the straight up sounds like torture, and these are victims at this point to me.
Do you think that psychological or physical torture is favored?
In Tennessee, it's psychological. It is more. In San Diego, it was almost 100% physical. In San Diego, he had actors do his dirty work for him. Russ never laid a hand on you because that kept him clean and kept him good. That waiver never talked about protecting the actors. It talked about how you could not talk about Russ, how Russ is not liable for what happens to you. It protected him. So now that he doesn't have people helping him, he's scared to go the physical route because then he actually could be the one in trouble. Realistically, I think he could still be in trouble from San Diego because he ran it. But in his mind, he's not doing anything.
Have any of those actors ever came forward or have spoken thus far?
So not really. 2016 when it was going on, they were in Facebook groups and they were pretty open. They've kind of all gone dark at this point, to the point where their identities, a lot of them have been buried, and nobody knows who actually hurt who because they all wore ski masks. So that kind of protected them from somebody saying, I know it was you that did it, you know?
So I was going to get into why you agreed to go through with McKamey Manor, but you did not. Do you regret at all being involved in any of it?
Yes, I have a lot of regret in helping get people there, signing them up, helping spread his lie. That's something that I've been dealing with personally a lot, which is what got me to do the Hulu thing. I'm kind of looking for my redemption to stop as many people from going to this thing as possible. We have the McKamey Manor Exposed Facebook group. Since the Hulu doc, I think we're almost at 50,000 people in there, just spreading awareness, telling all the other victims' stories, you know, really trying to get that out there to people.
Were there any lasting consequences of your ordeal, psychological, physical?
Right away, no. Like, I thought, okay, that happened. It was good. Now, as time has gone by, I started having reoccurring nightmares of suffocating. It wasn't until recently that I was going through a different haunt. I've never been claustrophobic in my life. I was put in a very small box and I just had a massive panic attack. And I'm starting to realize that, yeah, deep down, there is definitely something. Any type of restraint on me now, I do start to have that suffocation feeling. So it definitely, yeah, in the long run, it affected me. In the moment, I think it was a lot of adrenaline and things like that that kind of blinded me to what I experienced.
Did you ever take legal action against McKamey Manor, Russ McKamey? Not.
No, the $50,000, he would remind me all the time, hey, you can leave the group, but if you do and you go and start talking about me and you go to the cops and that, $50,000.
I don't care about that $50,000.
I think that anybody can sue you $50,000 at any time, right? You don't need to sign a waiver to be sued. So that's important to know. Doesn't mean they're going to win that lawsuit. I mean,
it's the same thing for them. You think you're going to get $50,000 from these people? No, that's the psychological side of it.
Yeah.
Just like they're not going to get $20,000 from you.
you don't have to agree for someone to sue you. So if Russ wanted to sue for $50,000, she doesn't need you to agree to it.
But that's why
that's
it's
just why it's
right?
psychological.
And that's what's the
fear.
I worked for a place, and they were like, "Oh, if you take this, you agree to be sued by this," and I was like,
"Yeah,
go ahead, try it out." You know, it's one of those things where it makes these people resistant to reach out. I mean, I don't want to give legal advice here, but I'm certainly not going to leave legal advice to tell someone to open themselves up to a lawsuit. Mm-hmm. But if it was me, like if I was one of those people, it wouldn't stop me from speaking out.
You can sue for anything. Like, you can go to small claims court for anything. Realistically, would y'all say that that's just a bit too much of a hassle for anybody to actually follow through on a threat?
No.
He might follow through.
I think that the question here is he going to get a lawyer to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This lawyer's not going to work on contingency to go try and
No, he's going to have to pay lawyers to do it, and they might see this as an unwinnable case, you know, so, and if that guy stops paying and you're saying he doesn't have any money, then the lawyer's not going to want to take a case against $50,000 or not.
In a car wreck, one of these uninsured drivers, they don't get sued. Why? Because it costs money to do it. Look, you need recoverability. So that's why we fight with insurance companies, because there's an insurance company over there who's signed a contract with that driver that says we're going to pay if they're negligent in causing this wreck and causing your injuries. In this case, is Russ going to start paying $500 to sue everybody that speaks out against him?
Right.
$500 an hour
to
pay the attorney to do it is going to be it's going to be more than $50,000. I mean,
well, the other question is he going to do it himself? He doesn't have the bandwidth to do that.
Yeah.
He's torturing people, working at Walmart, and living life. You know. So was he going to add suing 25 people that he probably couldn't hunt down if he wanted to? I mean, that $500 is probably cheap because now he's going to sue in California. Mm-hmm. And, it's just impractical and a total psychological trick.
Something I wrote down here, because I was curious about the statute of limitations for assault. I'm sure that there's other things you could, pin it down for, but, simple assault case, 1 year. That's the statute, and this took place.
Is that in Tennessee?
This is in San Diego, where all the physical stuff really
Okay.
took place. There's been physical stuff in Tennessee, but from what I understand, it was really aggressive in San Diego. And then a felony assault is 3 years. Mm-hmm. So, I don't think... I was wondering, like, could they even still do anything?
Well, I would say that yes, you need to be contacted quick, and they have to have the charges filed within that time frame.
Yeah.
There are other things that, let's just say that torture is a law. You can't torture someone. Well, that the worse the law, generally the longer the statute of limitations. As you can see, simple assault, felony assault, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's say murder. Is there a statute of limitations for that? I don't think so. But so the worse it gets, the longer it is. But that's a practical side of this. I mean, if you're looking at the Tennessee stuff, and he's essentially trying to kill this, suffocate this man with this mud, that's why I'm saying the criminal side of it is interesting, because why haven't they just filed one case? I mean, a lot of times the DA and these investigators, they really only want to bring winnable cases, or that's just like everybody else. Least resistance is the best path. So they're looking at, well, this guy signed a waiver. He went there willingly. Russ has a lot of things in his favor to sort of argue against a criminal case. The fact that it's on video, though, I think if you got to the jury and showed them, and all you said was, does this look like a guy who signed up for this?
And I think what it boils down to, aside from like legal aspect of it, it's like people's shame and a predatory person who's whispering in your ear, like, I will mess up your life. You're already so vulnerable that you would be willing to be tortured for $20,000. Why would you take a chance that I'm going to sue you for $50,000?
It's mob stuff. If he wanted to say I was going to break your kneecap, he would.
Yeah.
Like, if he was allowed to do that. But $50,000 is a little bit,
Yeah.
softer than that.
It's softer, but it's still, like, to the right
Well,
people,
it's
it
just
sounds like
something,
insane.
right?
Yeah.
People don't know what it is to be sued. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to hire a lawyer. I got to.
And it's true. It's expensive, and it's annoying, and it's time consuming.
Do you consider yourself to be a victim?
Yeah, I do. I definitely. There was a lot more than just the buried alive. There was a lot of manipulation he did, to the point where he would have me, like, if his girlfriends were fighting with him, they broke up with him, he would have me harass them, like constantly text them, tell them that they're in the wrong, because he told me if he didn't, he was going to commit. He would tell me that all the time. It got to the point where I said, dude, I'm just going to call the cops because I'm scared you're going to. And he would tell me, before the cops arrive, I'll have done it, and that's always going to be on your hands. There was a lot of mental abuse and manipulation throughout the years that I was a friend with him.
What is your opinion of Russ McKamey today?
I think he's a monster. I think that he is a narcissist, and he just wants gratification for himself, and it's going to come to somebody losing a life if he is not stopped.
What do you think the end game is or was supposed to be for this?
That's a great question. I don't know that answer at all. I don't think there's an end goal for him. I think that he is trying to perhaps just build a legend that can never be taken away, and I think he's doing a really good job at that right now. You see all the clickbait out there. He doesn't pay for that advertising, right? These are all rumors and myths that have gotten caught on, and at Halloween time, all these websites just run with it, and that's why he runs with these lies to scare people. He's built such a massive legend on this manor that doesn't exist.
What changes, if any, could be made to McKamey Manor to make it redeemable? And do you think that Russ has any redeemable qualities?
I don't see the manor ever being a good place to go, because if Russ is running it, he's going to flip. There's been a handful of tours where people say they loved it, right? They go through the show and they're like, all we did was paint our face and do some exercises in the front yard. Yeah, those people got off lucky. And it shows that he does have some sort of control on who he chooses to go after. And it's just at any moment he can flip that switch and do what he did to me. I was his friend, and he just didn't care how much I wanted out of that thing, because he wanted that special shot. He wanted to have that reaction video that was just extremely intense for his collection.
People who follow him, the loyal followers that I heard, from the Hulu doc, do you think that their opinion is misplaced? Do you think they would need to be faced with what he actually does in order to understand?
Yeah, I do. It's like a cult over in their official group with all the supporters. I have shown the black and white pictures, the truth, the results of what happened to people. And I still get hate from them saying, well, they knew what they were getting into. That's not okay. Head trauma is not okay. If you can't like tell somebody, hey, you're going to come here and I'm going to shoot you. That's still not going to be legal for me to shoot you, and these people just follow his word saying that, oh, the person's just complaining, saying they hurt their head because they had a bad experience, and they believe it. So I think, yeah, until those people are in our shoes, they're not going to know the truth. They don't want it.
I wonder, is like, this is like a psychological masterclass almost. Like, so that's why I wonder, like, you don't read a book and become like this, but he's intricately navigating
unless
every
you read
aspect.
books about cults.
Well, that's true.
Basically, everything he's saying is
true.
a cult. They use that type of fear. Don't speak out. Don't talk about us.
But I don't think he's like has a checklist where he's like, okay, good, I tortured them. But he finds himself in this scenario. It's just very fitting into place very, very well. And what he said was like, people loved it. Well, you need some positive reviews. Like, not everybody that comes out of there can say, I almost died. And the other thing was, what I was going to say was like, this is terrible, going after the victim. This is what you see in sexual assault cases. Mm-hmm. And there's a long history of that, wanting to blame the victim for what she did, and all this. There's a huge history of how that is terrible. Yeah. And that's just like the sue you for $50,000. It's a psychological trick or trap or assault, really, on these people who were hurt. And like you said, you're going through the release when you knew what you were getting into. You're reading this. They didn't know what they were getting into. Mm-hmm. Like, they
didn't sign up for that.
No.
I don't think anybody signs up for that.
No.
But I totally hear what you're saying. Like, in cases of sexual assault or when you see domestic abuse, stuff like that, you have to wait to get murdered before you're taken seriously.
Well, that's what I'm thinking is like, it's that person who says, well, they knew what they were getting into. They blah blah blah. What benefit do they get out of that by saying that? I think that psychologically is like, what does that make them feel better? Mm-hmm. To put it on the victim. Why? I haven't really connected the dots there yet. But like say somebody gets stabbed with a knife while they're there. Well, hey, it's in the release. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He knew he was getting into. I told him I might stab him. Like he said, you can't go there and be shot. It's like, and so to your point, how far does this victim have to be harmed before we give them their credit?
My final question for you, what advice would you give to somebody who is considering participating in the McKamey Manor?
I would say if anybody's considered participating in it, contact me. I have a Facebook group and a YouTube channel called Horror Road Trip. That place, I will help find people safe, extreme haunts that are out there that are for them, that will match whatever skill level or what they're looking for. Just don't go to the manor. Don't help feed his legacy. It's not safe. You never know if you're going to be that person that's going to be the next victim.
I did want to get some insight, first and foremost, about your experience as a veteran. Thank you for your service. You do have 3 combat tours under your belt, so you have a lot of experience in traumatic situations, and I was wondering if you were comfortable sharing some of those experiences and how it has affected you today.
You're right. I did 3 combat tours in Iraq, 2005 to 2006, 2008 to 2009, and then 2009 to 2010. 05 to 06, it was still, relatively kind of in the beginning of the war, kind of. But it was right at the start of some of the major like insurgency actions. And so, I was teamed up with an infantry unit, and that's all we did for, I think, 15 months is just kick down doors for the most part. Right. So, I saw my fair share of, wartime shenanigans, to put it mildly. 2008 to 2010, those were separate deployments, but I did pretty much the same thing. The war, they had an initial buildup around the end of 2006, 2007 that really kind of got things settled down a little bit. So by 2008, ground operations, while they're still occurring, they weren't nearly as intense or tragic as they were from 05 to 06. And so what I did there is I did convoy security, escorting large trucks up and down the entire country. And it wasn't nearly as bad as my 05 to 06 deployment, but we still had some experiences, to say the least. I think the Hulu doc kind of shows my current outlet for, I'm assuming, is PTSD related issues, right? Like when I got back from 2010, I was kind of having a rough time, but I didn't know it. I gave my kidney away. I gave 90% of all my belongings away. I didn't feel depressed. That wasn't really the overarching emotion. I think I just felt, I felt like I didn't have a purpose anymore. And I think I felt more guilty than anything else. And I really didn't know why I was giving away everything, right? Move forward to around 2013. I saw a video. I can't remember if it was a documentary or if it was like a little TV show about home haunting. I saw McKamey Manor, and I told myself right then and there, I got to go. I don't know why I felt like I had to go. I just had to go. Fast forward 2017, income, life in a better position. I decided to go. Ended up going twice to McKamey Manor in a short span of time. Became pretty good friends with Russ through 2018. Had a falling out with Russ. But then I just kept going to extreme haunted houses. So far as of today, I've done 15 extreme experiences across the country. Part of the reason why I did the doc is they wanted to explore, why are we doing this stuff, right? And that's still a question I'm personally trying to answer, because I don't have a definitive answer. I kind of have my own guess. And, I think a part of it might have something to do with survivor's guilt. Maybe possibly I feel the need, I have to atone for some of the stuff that I did over there. So, I'm still trying to work through that, and try to understand why I feel compelled to go to these things.
Would you say, like with my asthma, for example, that places like McKamey Manor give those ethical businesses a bad name for the public who may not understand why people go through them?
Oh yeah. I mean, what Russ does, there's so many differences. It's very difficult for me now looking back on it to consider what Russ does like an extreme haunt. He calls himself the king of extreme haunts. Right. But if you put it in comparison, at least when it comes to intensity, miasma is a level 10. Russ would be like a level 2. The stuff he does, at least when I went through it, it's not very intense. It's just Russ. Miasma spends months preparing for a show. They rehearse, they go through every possible scenario, they test all of the extreme elements to make sure that while it may look like it's on the left side of safety, it's actually far on the right side of safety, right? Like they're very safety conscious. Everything is very theatric, it's very narrative driven. When somebody goes to sign up for McKamey Manor, Russ is going to think about the show as it's going on. It doesn't matter who's doing it, right? It's not personal to that individual at all. We're talking almost two completely different ends of, I don't know if that answers your question either. I'm trying.
No, you're doing perfect. And I really thought it was very beautiful and very vulnerable for you. And I believe it was Melissa at the end of the doc to share your experiences going through miasma. I think it's a human expectation for our safety to be considered. That level of, that you're safe at the end of the day. And that's what's so bothersome about McKamey Manor. When you take somebody's autonomy, when you take somebody's consent, it's disheartening to see. I couldn't imagine.
Well, Russ is also really creepy too, right? Like, I mean, you have to sprinkle that in there because he's just an extremely creepy dude. Like my experiences was different from others. And like you said, consent is everything to an extreme haunt. They constantly ask you, do you consent? Do you consent? Do you consent? Right? Because they know as soon as you say no, or it looks like you're saying no, or you might be doing like the safe action, because it's not just safe phrases. There's also safe actions, right? Because you don't always have the ability to speak, right? So how do you do that other than the other person looking at the person to see if they look like they're still good? A good extreme haunt lives and dies by consent. Russ could care less though, right? Like especially in his San Diego days, he could care less, and there are countless instances where he just completely disregarded the person's consent. We saw it in the doc with Chris, right? And that was in Tennessee. There's also plenty more than plenty of examples in San Diego, and it's all on video. But Russ doesn't care. Again, it's not about the person. It's about what need are you fulfilling for Russ. Some people call it a kink. I tend to lean that way. I also tend to lean that he's also, I like to call him an emotional vampire, which I think is far more dangerous than anything else, because he will do, in my opinion, he will do anything to get some emotion out of you so that he can just soak it in, right? There's the allegation that Melissa made, right? In the documentary about possible SA against her, right? That was kind of what was alluded to, but what nobody really speaks about, and again, I don't want to tell her story, but there's so much more to that story. Like that's the tip of the iceberg. The rest of the iceberg is all the other stuff leading up to it, and all the text messages and video calls and all this other crazy stuff that he does that leads me to believe that even if he didn't do anything, he wants her to think he did. And I think that is far more dangerous, because he essentially was destroying her emotionally. And I think that is so wrong.
Do you think that psychological torture or physical torture is favored?
I think he uses physical torture adjacent elements in order to elicit an emotional response that he can then manipulate into more emotional psychological torture later, right? Like, because some of the worst things he does, never, like, for me, in my own personal experience, some of the worst things he does happens after the show. He'd call you up incessantly. He's extremely narcissistic. He manipulates you into sending him things, to spending money on him that he could care less about. Like I said, during the show, I personally fall into the category that when I went, I felt like it was a scam. Like I felt like I was deceived. I didn't get the show that I was expecting. It was complete and utter trash. Other people fall into more the victimhood mentality, the revenge type show. Like Laura Brotherton is a clear example of a revenge show where they just beat the crap out of her, even though she tried to stop several times, right? There was a vendetta there. But for me personally, I fell into, like, it was a complete and total scam. It really depends on which side of Russ you're getting and what he's using you for at that time.
Kris mentioned, a lot of the participants being under duress when they're signing and reading that waiver. Did you read the entire waiver? Did you feel like you were under, any duress?
So when I signed the waiver, we were at a park, right? And the waiver process took about 2 hours, if I'm not mistaken. And like I had to read every section one by one. Now, keep in mind, I never took the waiver seriously. I figured that it was part of the show, right? Just because it's called a waiver that meant nothing to me. I felt like it was a psychological tool that he was trying to use in order to get your mind in a certain way before actually going to experience his nonsense. And the reason I thought that is because most of the things that are listed in that waiver, there's no way that A, he would actually do, B, he would ever get away with, or C, are any way enforceable in any type of contract type environment, right? Like, yes, of course I signed it, but I never felt under duress because I never took that aspect of it seriously. That doesn't mean that other people did not take it seriously. Me personally, I didn't. I mean, it was misspelled. I mean, half the thing is completely misspelled. There's no grammar. There's very little punctuation. I mean, he's changed the waiver several times now. He's added all this stuff that I'm sure that he's copied and pasted from all these legalese stuff. Either way, none of it will ever hold up in any court that I could possibly think of, because for one, it's not like it's a contract. It's completely ridiculous. And there for a while you were signing it, like he was messing with you the entire time. Like for years, that's what he did, right? Like the show started as you were signing the contract. He was hitting on you, or not really hitting on you, but he was doing stuff to you, zapping you, all kinds of stuff as you were signing it. I actually saw one video where, and again, I didn't personally witness this, but it is on video, where he had a CCW on his hip. Granted, he was on his property, but you can't have somebody sign a waiver with a gun on your hip. Anyways, there's so many things wrong with that waiver. People try to take it seriously, and we've tried to tell people for years, he's not going to sue you. That waiver's not real. I've heard 50K lawsuit. I've heard 30K lawsuit. I found that funny because I think at some point that ended up in the waiver. The waiver that I signed, that was never in any of that, in any waiver. Like now there's like NDA type language in a waiver. That I didn't sign any NDA, right? Like my waiver, it was just welcome to McKamey Manor and then 40 pages of little blurbs and then a signature page, and that's it. And so when I first heard about all this new language that's been added and this NDA part and this, video and picture release and all this other stuff that he tries to include in there. I find it rather hilarious at this point. And I'm sad that people actually take it seriously, because some people are truly scared by that. But no, he's not going to sue anybody. In fact, in the doc, it says that Justin hacked his emails, and in those emails, there's actually a funny little email from his attorney, basically saying the exact same thing that I'm saying, because he's trying to go after somebody for defamation or slander or one of those things, and his lawyer basically told him, was like, you can't sue for this because you don't have any assets, right? There's no grounds because there's no damages at all. There's nothing that he does with, in my opinion, would ever stand up in court. But I'm not an attorney, so what do I know? I'll let you decide whether or not you want to put this in there. But I actually hired an attorney to go after Russ and his mods. He's selling merchandise of me, on it was on his website. I think it might still be, but it's still up there. And it's really defamatory to me as far as what this merchandise, because it has my pictures all over. I didn't know anything about this until just recently. Someone actually brought it to my attention. That really upset me. And so I can't sue him for anything in Tennessee. And I don't want to sue him for anything in Tennessee because I don't want to have to go back to Tennessee for that. Mm-hmm. So we found that I can sue him here because he did sell stuff in Texas and it's being sold online currently. So I'm trying to go after him for that as we speak. And that kind of alludes to what the other thing, that one of the real reasons why people are worried about Russ is because Russ uses other people to destroy them, right? And when I say that, they go after their family, they go after their job, they go after everything. They send emails to your employer, they make fake Facebook accounts, befriend your loved ones, and then just send them pictures and fake text messages. And yeah, that is real. That's happened to me, and it is pretty concerning.
I think this guy, he does have a different point of view. He keeps saying show. Like, he's been to a lot of these. He sees these as a production. I'm going to be entertained. This was just some dude jacking with me. Like, he got nothing of what he wanted out of this. I think that is Russ a psychopath? I mean, he is there to exploit people. Like, and that seems to be what he's doing. He's drawing people in. When they get the victim, they're now feeding off of them, it seems like. He's like, he said after the show was done was the worst stuff, calling you incessant. I'm like, so this guy's not done with you. Like, he needs more. And Chris kind of said the same thing, where it was like, he wants to feel like he's taken the power over you. Right. So I feel like that this dude's a classic case for some of that type of, someone to really work their psychoanalysis on.
I'm just realizing like how important it is for these type of things to look up the background, look up the assets of the place you're going to, because I mean, what we see all the time is, even when it comes down to grocery stores or any company, the more money they have to protect, the safer things get. Yeah. So that's just because when you're protecting something, you start to get a little safer. New businesses opening up or something like that, maybe they don't have all the precautions in place. So once they start making money, like a Walmart who has people going up and down the aisle every single hour checking for things that are spilled. But
do you think that he reverse engineered that? Because what he's done, he's effectively taken that away. Mm-hmm. So there's no money behind this. So he's either by dumb luck or by design, he's taken that safety net away. Mm-hmm. Like, he's like, cause that's why I'm saying. That's why I was thinking this is not for profit, or he's not trying to make it a profitable business, because then he would have something to lose to protect.
I think sometimes people make the product before the demand. You know what I mean? You make the big thing. He might have been thinking in the future, once the demand comes, then we can make a legitimate business. That's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes they'll market a product that's not even created yet, and then they'll get people, I made a sports drink and I blew it up all over YouTube, and then all of a sudden I make a deal with somebody that'll start making the sports drink.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Create the demand first.
You create the demand through the marketing. So that might have been what he's doing, and so I just think there's got to be. You wouldn't be filming all of this if it was sick. Why wouldn't you just do it in the back of your house? If it was, but it could be. I don't know. That's why it's hard for me to get on the same mindset as this guy. So
his currency is not in money.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
He doesn't live to make more money.
Right.
So he's not there to make it profitable.
See, that's why I want to know more about what these guys.
And that's why you can't.
What business stuff did you guys discuss? Like, what was you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they had to have had some, like, especially if you're working with the guy at the beginning of this entire thing, they had to have had plans and goals and like objectives.
Well, here's the thing. I think that it was more on a, okay, we're friends, we're buddies, right?
Yeah, like, well, when
There's
these people run these Facebook groups with 50,000 members, inevitably some of the top posters become the administrators, the moderators. They start, and they're not
Right.
paid for that.
And I've seen that in a lot of
now they're
predatory
on the
ways.
inside. So, and that's kind of
You
what's
don't think
happening
there's a
with these people.
discussion where it's like, hey, we're just going to take these videos, we're going to make it as disgusting as possible. Then once, you know, the whole internet blows up, then we're going to have something, and then we're going to be charging people. You know, you don't think there was ever a
No, I think there
discussion
was.
like
I think
that?
they definitely, because they were trying to create buzz. There was probably definitely some marketing thoughts like, hey, this will work well.
Right.
This video did well. Let's do one like this. But he wasn't paying these people.
Yeah.
Like Chris was never like, yeah, but cool, but where's my cut?
Yeah.
Like he didn't seem motivated to get paid for what he was doing for him either.
I was curious because you did say verbatim in the Hulu doc, you know, if a felony has not taken place, I do not want to go. You know, is this the mindset you had when hearing that there was no safe word, or did you know that there was no safe word?
I did not have that mindset going into McKamey Manor because that was my very first one. Like, I didn't really know what to expect to the degree of I knew surface level about McKamey Manor. I didn't have any real interactions with him. I tried to watch some of his videos, and they were really, I don't know if you ever watched some of his YouTube videos, but they're kind of all over the place, and they're 6 hours long. They're absolutely ridiculous. At that time, I did not have that mindset. That came later as I went to more and more and more, you know, increasing in intensity shows, right? Maybe that has a lot to do with the being desensitized to kind of what's going on, but no, at that time, no. And maybe that's again, but I did have high expectations, right? I went to McKamey Manor expecting what I saw on his website and what is still on his website today. He currently promotes San Diego McKamey Manor. There's really nothing about what goes on currently, which includes just rolling around in this front yard, or if you're a female, possibly him essaying you or him wanting to become your boyfriend or whatnot, right? But as a male, you know, I was hoping for something super intense, kind of like what I said. I was hoping for like a mental game, a mental kind of endurance type test, and I got none of that. Like I said, my show was a huge disappointment. And that's why I fall into the scam category, in my opinion.
I know that you had a drowning experience. Can you describe that and like how like it affected you? Could you articulate those feelings in the moment?
McKamey Manor, when I went through it, it was segmented, almost segments of like stunts. Closer to the end of it, he has I want to say it's like a kiddie pool, but like a really big kiddie pool. Maybe it's like 2 or 3 feet. Again, I didn't know this at the time. Right. I had no idea about this at the time. He told me to lay down, and when I laid down, I had to like get into this cage. And when I got into the cage and I laid down fully, the water was, I want to say, on my, like maybe right above my ears. And then he closed the gate and just started pouring more water in there. So I could feel it coming up. I could feel it going into my nose. And when it started going into my nose and I started to kind of breathe into it, I tried to get out and I really couldn't get out. And I was like, I'm done. And it was about that time that he opened the cage. He didn't take off any of my facial duct tape because my entire face was all duct taped up. And then he took me over and just kind of started spraying me down with water. Because I was, I guess, still muddy to some degree because I was caked in dirt and all kinds of nasty. But yeah, he washed me down with his hose, and I was freezing. And then he led me over into something, I forget, but it was inside somewhere. I don't remember where. And it was about that time that I think he went live on Facebook. I don't really remember because it was kind of hard to hear, and I had water in my ears. But you know, by the time I quit until the time that I actually got everything taken off of me, I'd say it was maybe 20-30 minutes. You know, in any other show, when you're done, everything comes off. If you have duct tape on you, that immediately comes off. And yeah, so that was starting to really kind of piss me off because I was freezing and I was ready to be done at that point. And it's funny you asked that, because that's the first time I remember I remember that. Like, I'm really thinking back on it, but that was the first time I've spoken about that in a very long time. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Because it sounds very inconsistent, like his practices. Like some
Oh,
of
yeah.
it's like very, you're just going to do jumping jacks in the front yard. And then
Yeah.
over here, we're going to pull your teeth out, which I don't think I've seen him actually do, but he has done something like drowning women. But it seems like it comes out of nowhere and it comes hard and extreme.
I think that's almost a testament to his laziness, if I'm being honest, right? Like, he has all these, granted, he doesn't have nearly as many toys at his disposal as he did in San Diego, but he's got a few there in Tennessee. Again, he doesn't plan for what's going on, right? There's no theme of the show. You know, there's no narrative behind it. Like, it's like he'll do something. When Holly was there, because I was there when Holly was there, that's his ex-girlfriend. Like, she was really into fitness. So like the first 2 hours were all about, you know, calisthenics, running, yoga for the most part. Keep in mind, no other extreme show does that nonsense, right? Because it's not about that. He looks around, he'll see something, is like, okay, let's go do this. And then you look around, okay, I'm kind of bored. Let's go do this. And then he'll go do something else, right? I think that has a lot to do with the overall inconsistency and overall laziness of, again, in my opinion.
For other shows, it seems like it's very meant towards the participant. With him, it seems like it's very self-satisfying.
After the Hulu thing came out, every day he was trying to post our exit interviews as if that was some sort of proving that we were lying and all this stuff. And half the stuff that he said in his posts were just absolutely disgusting, victim blaming, all kinds of just utter crap. And he thinks that our exit videos prove something. Like, for example, my exit video that I made is because I was still his friend. I was still his supporter at the time. Of course, I'm going to help him out. He sent me a long list of questions that he wanted me to answer. My video was pre-recorded, and he called me right before that. Actually, I went back into my messages with him in order to kind of jog my memory, but you can see where he called me, because I remember that phone call begging me to do this, saying that Scott Franks is coming after him. He's going to get arrested. Can you please make this video so I can post it and prove all the haters wrong, this, that, and the other? And it's like, sure, man, I'll try to help you out. And that's the same thing with Chris, right? Chris was supporting his friend, like Melissa was supporting, you know, her friend. These videos prove absolutely nothing, in my opinion, other than the fact that it shows him as a manipulator, a narcissist, and at this point now, a victim blaming piece of dog crap. The other thing too is this business practice. You're right. He doesn't run a business, right? Ben from Reckless Ben, he owns the California LLC, right? I own the Tennessee McKamey Manor LLC. You know, I did that so that Russ couldn't. Everything he's doing is not under any type of corporate umbrella. I mean, I guess you could argue that he's running it as a sole proprietorship, but still, you know, that's not registered with the state of Tennessee in any way. All of that, I do not think is going to work in his favor, right? Especially when we start talking about taxable revenue that's coming in, which I know for a fact he's not paying. Anyways, I mean, that's another layer of that onion that
It makes sense that, you know, Chris mentioned, you know, he just says he has friends over to get around, you know, and I'm just like, you still can't beat people, or you still can't waterboard people in a cage.
I agree with you. And, you know, all it takes is, you know, just his most recent video, the last time he did a show, is he refers to the people that are coming as like contestants. I thought they were friends. Now they're contestants, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's that whole thing. Like,
I think it's safe to say that you didn't realize right away what was going on there at McKamey Manor was not okay. Like, it took some time to process, right?
When I first did it, I had the luxury of being able to research a little bit. Now, people who go, you don't know what's going to happen because they won't let you into the private group. You don't know what kind of show it is. You don't know. Russ has a good way of, once you get into his world, him and his group of, you know, lieutenants that are his mods, they make sure that, you know, it's almost like Scientology. Don't go to the haters. If you go to the haters, you're done. You're not going to be a part of this, you know? And so he has a good way to kind of keep you under, I guess, umbrella of influence so that you only get the information that he wants to feed you. And it doesn't take long for that trust that you eventually build with him and his mods and some of his followers to just completely break apart. And there's an argument to say, because that was Russ's, I mean, I see this online so much, right? They're like, well, you knew what you were getting into when you signed up. Actually, no, I didn't. I did not know that my job was gonna get contacted just because I went to another extreme haunt. I was gonna be called a hater. I did not know that when I got there, that what I was signed up for, what I was expecting to get, after I spent thousands of dollars in order to get there, that all I was going to do is roll around in his front yard. I did not know any of that. Whenever I see that and somebody's willing to actually have a legitimate conversation with me, that's the first thing I tell them is I absolutely did not know that that's what I was getting. Otherwise, I never would have signed up for that nonsense. You know, I love extreme haunts. If you get any other extreme haunt, you're going to get exactly what is told to you. There's no false advertising. With Russ, there is. And this is without even bringing up that fake $20,000 that he was offering people.
I wanted to know, as a veteran, you know, looking back at McKamey Manor as a whole, how you feel about somebody who has less exposure to trauma and violence going through this experience. I know that it's not as extreme now, but
that's not to say that the next person that goes through, you know, isn't going to get that really bad experience. And I think that's kind of the point. Like, I like to think of a really good example who's my friend. He went to Russ wanting to help him out and do kind of like almost like a fake type of show. And he ended up bedridden for 2 weeks because Russ dragged him from behind a truck. So he went there to help Russ. He wasn't even there. He wasn't even going to do like an actual show. He was going to go into Russ to help him out to make some video, like a promotional type deal, from what I understand. And instead, he from chin down to belly button, skin was almost completely gone. This guy did nothing to Russ. Absolutely nothing to Russ other than to help him out. And that's how he's repaid, right? So somebody who goes through who hasn't had trauma very well could end up with some pretty serious trauma.
See, that's like in his MO. These psychopaths are so good at detecting vulnerabilities and doing what they do with people. Mm-hmm. It didn't work on this guy. That's probably why he had a bad experience. Mm-hmm. You know, like he's like, all I did was roll around in the mud in his front yard. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that he fit the mold of what Russ was looking for. So he doesn't get the same
people
experience,
are just different levels of toughness.
Yeah.
You see that with car accidents all the time, you know. Every time I get a phone call by someone named Brandon, he doesn't want to get an MRI, he doesn't want to get checked out by the doctor. I mean, they think it's just, you know, this is
That's
just,
what I mean. He
fine,
came for the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's like, where's the show? He's like, I didn't even take the release seriously, which I think Russ might have detected as, oh, this guy's not going to be all in.
He won't give the reactions that I want.
Yeah. That's right. He's not going to give me what I need.
Brandon talks a lot about like the backlash from the moderators and his little followers and it being extreme. And I wonder if maybe that's why, like, he sicked him on him because he didn't get the reaction that he wanted.
Well, he was in the doc, right? The
yes.
documentary. Mm-hmm. So that, and then like this other guy that he said his friend went to help him. This is. The friend goes to help, and now all of a sudden the friend is sucked in. I don't know, like skin almost gone from chin to belly button. I mean, goodness gracious. Yeah. He's like a guy who went to help him. So I think that triggered something. He sees it as vulnerability. Oh, this guy's boom, I can suck him in. Mm-hmm. And look, and then I don't know how that comes up. Like, hey, I'm going to drag him behind my truck. Mm-hmm. Like, how does that even sound like a good idea?
Right. You got to have a really good ability to get people to trust you. I think that's just a testament as to how manipulative Russ McKamey is to be able to get a guy tied up or put in a trough. And, you know, maybe he was like, you know, we're just going to take pictures for social media. And he's very convincing. Like, you trust this man to not harm you. And the next thing you know, you need skin grafts and, you know, you're claustrophobic now. And it's just
for his benefit, basically.
Yeah.
It didn't even give him any money.
No. And it didn't get put online either.
No. And, you know, I think since the Trump thing came out, there's been a lot narcissism. There's a lot of things about all these videos and like where they're like I watched one where it's like 8 people are like, can you pick the narcissist? Like just by asking them questions and talking stuff. It just comes down to that is a very interesting element of this. Mm-hmm. Is that they are good at doing what they do. Right. They just are. They've been practicing their whole life. I mean, he's been doing this a while. Like they've been interacting with people and having this type of these types of relationships with people for a long time. Right. They become very good at it. You know, like charismatic people. I mean, look at other people like the Scientology. Look at the other cults. I mean, and for us, we're like, who would do that? Like who would drink the Kool-Aid shot?
And I hope that if nothing else, like people gain that kind of sympathy because we're on the outside looking in. You know, everybody always says, you know, I would never fall for a cult. You could though. You really could. I don't know how persuasive. What's his name? Miscavige. the Scientology guy. I don't know how persuasive he is, but I mean, he has celebrities at his flock, so I don't know.
In what ways do you believe that McKamey Manor helped or hindered coping with your PTSD?
It hurt it. McKamey Manor specifically. Extreme haunts, it's a different story. But McKamey Manor specific, because it made me more paranoid than I usually would be as an outcome of kind of PTSD, like to the point that it became kind of ridiculous, hyper vigilant to the max. Because after I left, and they were legitimately coming after me. They were legitimately trying to attack me to a degree, for the most part, online. I tried my best to prepare for it, but no, it definitely did not help as far as that goes. And that's still something I'm dealing with to this day. Yeah, I would say it definitely hindered it in that regard. But as far as other things, like I don't have recurring nightmares about McKamey Manor or anything like that, but because for the most part, what I did there for me isn't anything that's really that super triggering.
I kind of want to know, what are your thoughts on being filmed through the process? How do you feel about his filming of the entire experience as a whole? Because my attorneys, they kind of thought, oh, well, he's going to monetize off of it. You can't monetize off of it. He doesn't. So, what is the reason?
When I went through, I didn't know he was filming as much as he was, if that helps. Because I went in 2017. I was his third show, right? Very little footage. Like he didn't do lives back then where he like showed what was going on as it was happening, right? He released pictures and whatnot of somebody else's show, and that's really kind of what I had to go off of what was going on in the Tennessee show. But I didn't realize that he filmed the whole thing and that he was filming the entire time, because again, at one point all my senses are taken away, right? Like you can't hear because you've got babies screaming in your ears. He duct taped my head. I can't see. You really can't smell because there's different things that he puts over your face that just smell awful, and that just kind of clogs your sense of smell. So I didn't know I was being filmed the entire time. The thing that bothers me is how later on, when I found out kind of what he does with that stuff, right? Like some of the pictures end up on merchandise. Like now I think you have to sign like a release, a picture and video release. But again, when I did it, I didn't sign any of that. I had no idea that I was going to end up, potentially people are buying my tour type face. It's vile. I hate it. Like I don't like that he's potentially making money off of crap that I went to that I didn't even know he was taking pictures of. It's absolutely vile. And furthermore, when I think more back on it, like when I think about, this potentially being a part of his kink, it just makes you want to go take a shower. There's potentially that he's looking back and getting off on this type of stuff, right? It's disgusting. At least even if his kink is the emotions that he tries to bring out of people, even that is it's absolutely disgusting and vile in my opinion.
I guess in a past tense, did you ever think to take legal action based off of what you went through?
I wanted to, but I wasn't enlightened enough to realize that Russ couldn't truly do anything. There was that aspect of it. And there's also the aspect of, I've seen what his followers will do to you if you speak out against him. Like I have a professional job, right? Like, and I also have a side job as well. And is it worth, the selfish aspect of me starts thinking, before you start thinking that other people are being affected the same as you. But I was like, do I want to put all of that at risk just for this fat old man in Tennessee? And I think when I realized that, obviously I'm far from the only one, that helped compel me personally to overcome my crippling fear of public exposure of any kind to go and do that Hulu documentary. I wasn't the only. Right. And I don't even really want to put myself in that victim category, especially when I look at people like Laura Brotherton, when I look at Chris, when I look at all these other people, right? It's very difficult for me to have the audacity to think that I'm in that same category, because I don't feel like the stuff that I went through qualifies as them. But it might, I don't know.
So you don't view yourself as a victim?
I don't know. A part of me says, I think objectively, yes. I think objectively, if I were to look at it on just the facts, if I put myself in that category subjectively, then that means that for me, I would have to compare my level of victimization to those others, and I would feel embarrassed to do so. Does that make sense? Like, yeah. I don't know. Kind of like the war stuff. Another reason why I don't talk about war crap is, I can't sit there and talk about the crap that I went through with a Vietnam veteran. Yeah, I did this, I saw this, all my buddies died, da 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 da. But yet he's like, in my mind, I'm like, well, this Vietnam veteran probably saw 50,000 times worse than what I went through. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can bond, we can trauma bond. I don't know. I guess it's hard to explain. I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, I totally get it. I understand. I'm right there
Yeah.
with you. I mean, we have different experiences, but we are but humans. So,
Yeah.
that pain, that those feelings are valid.
I felt a lot of compassion towards him because I don't want him to like hold all that just to protect other people or to like validate other people. His trauma is valid.
What irritated him the most, I think, was he felt like he was scammed, and it was the after effects, the attack afterward. Mm-hmm. The other people who let's just say lost their skin, they have different reasons for why they're a victim. Mm-hmm. I mean, this dude's still a victim. He's just in a different way.
Right.
This is the exact same thing we see with car accident victims every day. It's like when they call in, there's worse accidents out here. They're afraid to talk.
I'm still alive.
Yeah.
At least I didn't die.
Right.
Yeah, but you're gonna live with a crook in your neck for the rest of your life, or numbness and pain shooting down your arm.
Right.
And also, what I want to say is that when you go to jury duty, people in the jury box sometimes want to minimize that person's pain. The easiest pain to endure is someone else's. Mm-hmm. When it's not you, you minimize it and all this because you feel good, whatever. Right. I'm not over there wanting money for my pain. Mm-hmm. But in reality, we're valuing that person's damages. We're valuing that person's pain. So for him to say he's not a victim, he is. It's just a different scenario. It's a different thing. So when you have a car wreck and they go to the trial, what I want to tell, what I want every potential juror to understand is that this person went through this and they're here through no fault of their own. People in our profession think is the problem with some jurors is that those jurors, they think, well, I've got back pain, nobody's paying me any money. Mm-hmm. But it's not the same. We're here about this person and what are they going through and what are they going to have to keep going through. These things also don't end. You have these long-term effects. It's not like, hey, we just go down there and get some money and everything's great.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. Right.
And I shared with him because I have been diagnosed with PTSD after that car accident I was in when I was a kid. And, at the time, like, I fractured my arm and I thought, that was going to be it. I didn't realize that when I was 26, I would still be so afraid to be in a car. And I didn't sign up for that. I didn't know that was going to be a lifelong issue, that I worked through therapy, exposure therapy, medication. It's just something I have to cope with. And I don't think people really think too much about that, how much it affects you and how inconvenient it is and how, again, valid it is.
And what we talk about is quality of life. Mm-hmm. So
the fractured arm goes away. Right.
Right.
These type of long-term injuries that we look for, especially the mental, that's every day mm-hmm. that you have to.
So if that's lowered your quality of life, just like everybody else in a car wreck and everything else, it's the quality is lower. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about a life. Quality mm-hmm. for life. This is a life.
Blunt question. Do you regret ever having anything to do with McKamey Manor?
Really difficult to answer. I regret aspects of it because I brought people to him. But at the end of the day, I've met some absolutely lifelong, amazing friends because of all of this, right? Unbelievably amazing people as a result. So if I were to say regret, then that by contrast, I would have to regret having those friendships, and I will never regret having those friendships or some of these experiences, right?
Right.
So I don't know. It's very difficult to answer. For the most part, no, I don't. I reluctantly say no. A reluctant no.
Regarding your 2017 interview with WHNT 19 News, accompanied by Russ, at that time, pre-McKamey Manor, you were, a little excited, a little, ready to go. What would you have to say to 2017 Brandon? And do you think he would listen to you?
Absolutely not. There's no way. I mean, because if I were to tell 2017 Brandon everything that I know now, I would think that I was a crazy person. Like I think that somebody would be trying to tell me that the world is flat when I know it's round. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't fully drinking the Kool-Aid at that time. However, I never would have expected in 6 months from that time, 6 months, 9 months, that I would be actively targeted by the people in his group. Yeah, there's no way.
What changes, if any, could be made to McKamey Manor to make it redeemable? And do you think that Russ McKamey is redeemable?
No, I do not think Russ McKamey is redeemable. And what changes could be made? I'm going to answer that question under the assumption that McKamey Manor, there's nothing that'll make it ever go away. It'll always exist. What would I change it to make it better? Number one, get rid of Russ McKamey. Number two, introduce morality. Number three, introduce ethics. Number four, introduce structure. Number five, introduce narrative. And then finally, six, put the contestant first, with consent being the number one rule that can never be broken. That's how you make McKamey Manor great. As far as Russ not being redeemable, the man needs help. He has every resource available to him that is absolutely free, costs him not one penny, and he is actively refusing to go and get any help. So there's no redeeming quality, in my opinion.
What do you think, if ever there was, the end game, the end goal?
I think he's living the end game. Up until earlier this year, he was living his end game, right? He's retired from the military. He's not being held accountable to really anybody. You know, I think he, as a narcissist, as a sociopath, I think he would probably prefer that. And he gets to manipulate people at his will. He had a following of like 30 some odd thousand people, basically an echo chamber. As a sociopathic, narcissistic cult leader, I can't think of a better life, you know? You know, who needs money when you have that kind of influence, I guess? And he's not really making money off this stuff because that's not about money to him. Like, you hear him all the time saying, "Oh, I could be a millionaire. I could be a millionaire." It's not about money. This isn't about money to him. He's getting the needs that he wants fulfilled are getting fulfilled by doing what he's doing. And the worst part is it's not financially motivated, you know, and that's what's scary. That's what's really scary, because at least a man that's got really nothing to lose.
What advice would you give to somebody who is considering going through with McKamey Manor?
I would ask them a question. I would say, did you know there are other extreme haunts? That would be my first one. Because 90% of the people that I talk about, if I were to just say the word extreme haunt, their next word would be, "Oh, you mean McKamey Manor?" Because that's all people associate with extreme haunts. People have no idea that there's a whole world of extreme haunted houses out there that are 1,000 times better in every category than McKamey Manor.
Actually, real quick, before you go, can you actually like this video, leave a comment if you want to, and please subscribe. Thank you.